Recently, having finished two of his acclaimed mangas, Solar Lane and What a Wonderful World, Inyo Asano, the author, stated that it was at this point where he decided he's done with feel-good stories. So he embarked on a journey to write a manga which was supposedly to end by its 7th volume. But it ended up being 13 volumes long and grew into a story which would end up being this facade, taking readers to places of human psyche they never imagined a manga could, and for a person who never knew shit about it in the internet, it was an enigma. This manga, this story, it was titled Oasumi Punpun or Goodnight Punpun, and it is considered Inyo Asano's magnum opus. So I decided to read it 2 times even, and it it sure was something, man. So here's a video about it. This is Harumi, an ordinary guy living an ordinary life with his fiancée. When one day Harumi decides to take a walk outside to clear his mind from certain urges, he meets one of his old friends, someone from his old town, from his old school, someone he would have considered one of his closest. This sudden meetup turns out to be pretty awkward, but both of them feel this certain excitement within them that none of them are able to convey to each other properly. So Harumi decides that maybe it's time to go back to his ordinary life. But before that, he decides to take one last glance back at his friend, Punpun. This is the final chapter of Oasumi Punpun, a chapter that's supposed to be the final conclusion to this tragedy of a life that Punpun has led so far. It's a life that Punpun despises so much so that he doesn't want anyone to remember him. He doesn't want anyone to have any memory of him. By the end of the manga, all that Punpun desires is to not exist anymore. And so why would a mangaka choose to use this final chapter to give us a view at Punpun's life through a stranger's perspective? It's quite fascinating. It reminds me of Osamu Dazai's No Longer Human, but we'll get to it in a minute. In multiple interviews, Inyo Asano, the author of course, has stated that his initial plans for the final chapters were to kill Punpun. But looking at how the story turned out, he changed his mind and instead decided to keep Punpun alive because, now I'm going to quote Inyo himself, he said that he changed his mind and instead decided to keep Punpun alive because throughout his life nothing turned out the way he wanted it to be, so him dying would be too clean of an ending for him. I repeat, too clean for an ending. Like, bro, do you see what I mean here? This guy who created this character hates Punpun. Listen, I agree, Punpun is a piece of shit, but why? I have tried to write a proper script for this manga bold. I have tried to write a proper script for this video so many times, but each time I felt like something was missing. Either I was not able to express what I really wanted to express, like how I felt or how any reader feels reading this manga, or sometimes I would just write up some goofy ass shit without any clear distinction between common noun and proper noun. So after many failed attempts, I have decided that the best way to talk about this fucking manga is to just think out loud. At its core, Goodnight Punpun is a visceral exploration of human emotion, capturing joy, sadness, love, and of course, despair. As the story unfolds, we are taking on this roller coaster of emotions alongside of Punpun, experiencing his highs and lows, his hopes and fears, and through the power of Inyo's art and storytelling, the manga adeptly captures the essence of being humans with all its flaws and complexities. But for Punpun, this isn't a story about hope. Sure, some might argue that Sachiko is a ray of hope in Punpun's life, while that was true until Aiko appears in Punpun's life. Again, Aiko is Punpun's first love. someone he fell in love with the first time he laid his eyes on them. It's a cliche, of course, because, well, it's supposed to be a cliche. Now, when we start reading this manga, Punpun is initially presented as this cute bird-like character, but then he slowly loses some of those bird features when he and Aiko stop talking to one another in middle school. So we fast forward to high school, and again Punpun has very subtle transformation, again losing his bird-like features because of him being involved in this weird love triangle that of course involved Aiko. Flash forward to the future, Punpun again turns into this weird floating pyramid thing. Every time Punpun becomes something, he transforms into something, that just means that he is not doing good. And of course this floating pyramid thing also gets triggered after he catches a glimpse of Aiko one day while he's traveling to work on metro. Now, out of all these transformations, my favorite one, and probably the darkest one in the manga, is this half human, half bird version of him. It's after this point that Inio goes fuck all with the story and messes up Punpun completely. Now, do you want to know how this transformation gets triggered? Guess. Aiko is fucking back. Throughout the story, Aiko has been someone who has only made Punpun feel worse and worse about himself. Aiko isn't a bad character. I'm not saying she's a bad character. She herself is a victim of domestic abuse from her mother, who probably has OnlyFans. And also, it's not that him and Aiko has had a very toxic relationship in the past. No, but every time he betrays Aiko's expectations, he breaks her promises, Aiko grows more and more away from Punpun. And so Punpun, being Punpun, blames himself for everything, which eventually leads him going deeper and deeper into his emotional turmoil. Okay, remember how I said their relationship wasn't a toxic one? Yeah, not yet, because after Punpun becomes this abomination, he meets Aiko again, and things don't take a good turn. If the story of Punpun so far had been a heartbreaking tale about a person who cared too much, the last quarter of the story is a gut puncher for every reader, and Inio manages to break Punpun even further as he entangles himself into Aiko's life, through which he is exposed to this very darker side of himself. Aiko's emotional instability pushes Punpun's insecurities beyond his limits, triggering a downward spiral in his mental well-being. Her presence in Punpun's life has only done one thing, and that is to reinforce his sense of worthlessness and hopelessness. And now, meeting her again, these two feelings have been reinforced and has been engraved into him, pushing him further and further away from finding genuine happiness. At the beginning of the video, I mentioned Osamu Dazai is no longer human, and I compare it with how the last chapter of the manga made me think about the last chapter of the book, and I realized that both these stories tell a very similar tale of these two individuals who have led a life of nothing but suffering. Now, whether that suffering was brought upon them by themselves is questionable. I feel like Takezo and Punpun have quite a similar ending to their respective stories. The book No Longer Human ends with a quote by a woman who knew Takezo, who says, "The Yozo we knew was so easygoing and amusing, and if only he hadn't drink." No, even though he did drink, he was a good boy, an angel. In similar fashion, when Punpun supposedly goes missing, Sachiko visits his old town and his father, where he says that Punpun was a really kind child who used to laugh and smile all the time. It's funny how similar the vibes of these two endings are, and the manga goes to such an extent as to portray Punpun through the eyes of a stranger, showing him as having this very fulfilling life while being surrounded by people who care about him. This is not a happy ending, and if you think it is, fuck off. Yeah, you made it to the end of the video. ये वीडियो का टोन काफ़ी serious हो गया because, well, to be honest, I did want to make a video with a serious tone, especially about a video about Osamu Punpun, and I hope it doesn't get fucked by YouTube like the last video did. Bro, let me be honest with you, I was actually really bored making this video because of how much manga panels I had to edit and shade and yada yada yada. Oof, bhai. Okay, end of the video. Bye bye. Also, like, share, comment, subscribe. You know the drill. Just please consider fuck, please consider subscribing. Let's go. Woohoo, भाई सोने जाना है.